Paint Namibia a new color with our top quality Neo-Dur PVA paint. Neo Paints produces high quality paint inspired by Namibia. Buy 2 Neo-Dur 20-liter paint in our standard or new trendy colors and get a 2-piece overall free. Neo-Dur is highly washable, UV resistant and has an 8-year guarantee. Promotion is offered nationwide at participating hardware stores and is valid from 25 September to 12 December. For more info, visit neopaints.com. T's and C's apply. Neo Paints, a coat of excellence.
A very good morning to all our viewers. This is the evening review taking place rather on an odd time today, which is a morning time. Maybe we can rename it to a morning review today for the sake of the timing. But my name is Tewan Jabela, the host, and we are coming to you live from the Namibia Tourism Expo here at the SKW Sport Grounds in Olympia. And yeah, it's like exciting times to see that we can have an event like this taking place this year amid the scourge of COVID-19. Just for those watching, you can actually join the Namibia Tourism Expo from the public. Actually is allowed to come in from 12 o'clock this afternoon onwards to come and have a great time here. But otherwise, let me welcome my guest, Mr. Herbert Jauch, who is a labor expert who has been on this platform before and is here to engage us again in a conversation related to jobs and, of course, elections ahead a couple of weeks from now. Herbert, welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much, Troy.
Yeah.
I'm happy to be back.
Yeah, and you look great. You're in good shape. You battled COVID-19 like a champion. So it's good to see you in good shape also.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, to tell me about that experience. It was an emotional one for you. I saw a video. It's not something that I want to discuss with you necessarily, but I think you would understand the context why people would want to know. Because, you know, to a lot of people, COVID remains just a figment of imagination.
Yes.
But it's actually a true situation. How was your experience with the virus?
Well, I was like most other Namibians,
Yes.
thinking, okay, the virus is around and it's necessary to take some precaution, but it's not as bad.
Yes.
So what we did is following the normal, wearing masks, hand sanitizing, etc., etc. But of course, within their own family,
Yeah.
with the grandchildren especially,
Yes.
these rules were kind of suspended.
Yeah, of course.
And then I got a high fever, and I just thought it was a bad flu. That was sometime in August. But the fever stayed very high, and then I phoned my doctor and said, should I do something special? And the doctor said, go for the test, the COVID test. Then it was a Friday afternoon.
Yeah.
The queues were long at the Robert Mugabe Clinic, so after standing there a while, I gave up and said, oh, let me go Monday.
Yeah.
By Monday, I was so weak and burned up, I fainted in the queue to get tested.
Yeah.
And still I didn't realize that is COVID.
Yeah.
Then it was still football time, Champions League football on TV. So I said, no, let me just wait for the test results now and watch the football till then, not realizing how serious
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
Then my wife and my daughter realized something is wrong with me. They said I turned green and blue, and I realized I had problems breathing.
Yeah.
And I still thought, let's just wait a bit more.
Yeah.
That evening, they took me to the hospital. Hospital did a check, and I ended straight up with the ICU. I would have died that night. And it showed me also, if you underestimate that virus, it really gets you. And in my particular case, what it did, it burned up the body with constantly huge temperatures, 40 degrees and so on. Yeah. And then the virus attacked the lungs. So all of a sudden, I couldn't get air anymore. And that's the moment at which you can die. Yeah. Now, the interesting thing in our case was probably through the children, we all got it. 8 people in the immediate family had COVID. 7 had no symptoms or mild symptoms. And in my case, it virtually would have killed me within 5 days. And that's the tricky thing with this virus, because quite a lot of people get it, but it doesn't affect them much. And some get it, and it takes you out. And I was just very lucky, saved by excellent nurses and doctors on the brink of death. I was virtually gone, and I felt it also that my life is now going. And so my advice to Namibians is, you don't know how it will affect you personally till you have it. And if it's bad, it's really bad. It's nothing like a flu. It's not comparable. It eats you up from within, and if you don't have access to good health care at that moment, you are just gone. So for now, because doctors don't yet know how will it affect you, how will it affect me, how will it affect the next person, till we know more about it, we need to be just cautious not to get it, because you might be the unlucky one.
Exactly. So in your family, it must have been only you that went to that extent of sickness?
Yes,
everybody
absolutely.
Else was, okay, indeed.
And in fact, my daughter didn't get it because she just followed very strictly the kind of precautions. And although she was between two COVID-affected households, she didn't get it. So it is possible with precautions to protect yourself, and that's a good thing to know.
Exactly. No, I mean, you are raising a very important point there when you talk about how complacent we get at home. I mean, you can't, in public places we would have our masks on and sanitize, but once you get home, you wash your hands from work, and you start mingling with your family as a normal setup. And therein lies some danger also, but I suppose it's inevitable. You can't be wearing, it's very difficult to be wearing masks and everything at home. But thank you for sharing that very horrible experience, Mr. Jauch. We are just glad that you are back on your feet and ready to engage us again.
Thank you so much.
So speaking of COVID-19, now there are talks that it's a relapse in Europe now. I saw Germany, France, the UK, and another country, 4 of them yesterday that were contemplating new lockdown measures. What does that mean for a country like ours that was expecting, that has just opened up to tourists? Germans, for example, they love coming here. And we thought we were on a path to recovery, and then that happens. Do we see any bearing on that on our economy?
Definitely, and that is the tricky thing. Because COVID doesn't affect everyone badly, it's not like Ebola virus seems to have had a much more direct and clear effect of everybody who gets it. This one, the COVID one, affects people differently. But now, to protect, you need to kind of almost wall in certain communities and prevent the movement, and particularly the tourism. Now, that has, of course, economic consequences and livelihood consequences. And we've seen that in Namibia, including even media houses have felt the impact. So it affects the economy as a whole. It affects, in our case, hundreds of thousands of people's livelihood. In Europe, the pattern was the same. So they decided over their summer months, and when the tourism season really gets into gear, to open up. Then people returned home. Now the cooler weather in winter is coming, and now they have a massive epidemic at their hand. And you can see that this kind of just open and see what will happen, the Trump kind of approach to the pandemic is just not working. And so it puts Namibia and countries like us in a difficult position to weigh up how do we deal with the economic fallout, but at the same time we need to protect people to some extent. By opening the borders, especially to overseas tourists from Europe, it's clear it will lead to a further spread. Our rules have now been amended to say if you have a COVID negative test 72 hours before you travel, you're allowed in. But in those 72 hours, you could have picked up the COVID. In fact, you could have picked it up in the plane coming to Namibia.
Precisely.
Then your test shows negative, you're allowed in, but you are a spreader of the COVID virus. Possibly even other strains from Europe as people come. We don't yet know how the virus mutates. On the other hand, the tourism operators have cried now for months that they are collapsing and that they will have to retrench. So it's a very careful balancing act. But I think that sector must also look at itself. namely that it has focused almost exclusively on overseas tourists, the Euro tourists and the US dollar tourists. Namibians as tourists were virtually disregarded, and the price structure of our tourism industry is absolutely anti-Namibian. It's geared towards high-income earners from overseas, not at Namibian. Now, I'm a camper personally for many years, and I've seen how with the opening towards foreign tourists and all these 4x4s with the roof tents that you see all over, how campsite prices have even shot up dramatically. What you got a bungalow in years past, you pay now for a campsite. So the industry has been very skewed in terms of just towards the high end to the big payers from Europe and the US. And I think it's a time for the industry to relook at itself and say, we must also accommodate Namibians traveling in their own country. And that means adjusting your price structure accordingly. We must also be open to regional travelers from Zimbabwe, from South Africa, from Botswana and elsewhere, to also come and visit Namibia. It can't just be Germany and England and Italy and France. And that is a challenge for this industry to reorient itself. And that would give also a better buffer in terms of not just relying on overseas tourists, because, and we must also remember, mass tourism that's based on flying in people is an environmental disaster. In terms of our emissions and destruction of the ozone layer and global warming that affects us badly with droughts and floods. We cannot encourage mass tourism based on flying in people. We must think of a green economy also in terms of tourism.
Indeed. So it's very interesting what you're saying, Herbert, because yesterday here at the Namibia Tourism Expo, we held awards for the Responsible Tourism Awards, where we were essentially awarding people who have adjusted their way of doing things towards greener practices and stuff like that. And it's very good that you also just mentioned it there. But how do you see it going forward, Herbert? Are we going to see now the local tourism industry sort of holding on to some of these new lessons that they've learned, that, for example, these local people that we've ignored for a long time actually matter to us also, so let's make special provision for them? Or are we going to see a situation where lodges and others will become even more expensive to make up for lost income of the past couple of months?
Exactly, and that is the choice to be made now. If they want to even increase prices further to make up for lost income, very short-sighted, very narrow understanding of tourism. That will not lead to sustainable tourism. And I was glad to hear that even the minister now raised the issue of promoting local tourism. For that, you have to look at your price structure. You have to bring it in line with earnings in Namibia to make sure Namibians can come that want to go there. Then the second part of that is a kind of promotion, that people who grew up in Karas region want to visit Kavango or Zambezi or Kunene over time. And even if you don't have relatives there must be places where people can go to. In the past, that used to be very much what's now under Namibia Wildlife Resort. That catered very much for Namibians in terms of price structure. And you have also places that are not fancy, not expensive, but all the basics are there and Namibians can enjoy them. I think that aspect of our tourism needs to be developed systematically. And then they must understand that it's a dual strategy and that we should not go back to the mass tourism that we had before COVID. That is neither sustainable nor desirable in terms of ecological impact. And if it's a more balanced approach to that, then that industry as a whole will survive. If it's a matter of quick catching up and making up for lost income, then you basically shoot yourself in the foot long term. And we might see really a significant decline of that industry as a whole.
Indeed. And so government has relaxed a lot of regulations now in the past couple of months. As someone who monitors closely industries, especially from a job point of an employment point of view, do you think, do you see a return of normality insofar as people getting their jobs back and getting their full salaries back and stuff like that? or do you think there's more that government could have done to sort of return to normality?
I think our first problem conceptually is to think there could be a return to normality, that somehow this COVID phase will just end and we return to where we were. Will never happen. It's an absolute illusion, but it's maintained in public debates very much. Also, I would say the pre-COVID, before COVID reality was not a wonderful reality. We had 34% unemployment rate. We had over 50% of young people being unemployed. Now, that's not a marvelous situation to go back to. However, this has become much worse now. My sense is we are looking now at an unemployment rate of 40 to 50%. The official 11,000 retrenchments that took place in the first 9 months of this year is just the tip of the iceberg, because these are only the ones who were reported to the Office of the Labour Commissioner. In the rural economy, in the informal economy, retrenchments just happen and they are not reported anywhere. So we can safely say it's tens of thousands of jobs lost. Now, they won't come back next year. They won't also come back just because a vaccine might be found someday. So we need to look at our economy and identify how do people survive in these conditions. In terms of jobs, we need to really deal with our own resources very differently, and that means processing local resources further. One is obviously the agricultural sector, not just fresh produce, but you turn it into juices, into jams, etc., etc. Some private farms have already done that, and you find now in some shops made in Namibia tinned soups and things like that. Now that must be upscaled on a large level in the agricultural sector. But we also have other opportunities that we have not explored further. For example, the bush biomass, the invader bush. Once it is cut and collected, your sister newspaper some years back had a pilot project on turning that into school furniture and boards. Now that can be done, and then you have a value addition inside Namibia, and those wooden boards can be used in the construction of the 300,000 housing units that are needed in Namibia. So we need to think of economic cycles, value addition, and jobs along the way. And then personally, I am also very convinced what this crisis has shown us. We need to also secure a basic livelihood for all, and that comes through the introduction of a basic income grant. One of your guests recently, Kaviua, discussed that with you as well. Now, I think these two go hand in hand. A basic income grant and new jobs through local value addition. That is, I think, the kind of future that we must now envision and make it very concrete. Not wait for things to happen, but make them happen. Very deliberate outcomes like that. And then there is not the pressure on just tourism and the finance sector creating jobs, and the rest of the economy is stagnant. Mining will never be a big job creator. So we need to look at local manufacturing, local processing, local value addition to do that. And there are some sectors where it's blatantly obvious that we can do it.
Indeed. And speaking of those possible solutions, Herbert, we have elections in 3 weeks' time. And I'm thinking to myself, do we have, are we getting any of those kind of messages from our political actors that are vying for political office and wanting our votes? Is that the kind of propositions that they must be hammering more on for us to really see whether they are capable of getting us, because we have a crisis. We have a crisis compounded by a number of factors. Of course, COVID came to put the final nail in the coffin, but it also boils down to how the economy generally is managed. When you talk about value addition and a lot of things that we are not doing currently, how much buy-in will these kind of propositions have to a voter looking for someone to vote in this election?
The debate has not taken the bigger picture yet. It has focused on certain aspects of it. Like I've noticed the housing issue has been featured very prominently. And of course, particularly when you talk of local government election, housing is of course a key thing. And that is very good that we at least address that. But if you look at the country as a whole and you look at the national economic crisis that we're facing, which is of course part of a much bigger international crisis, we need to still enter that debate very, very concretely, very loudly, and very deliberately. To think somehow things will fall into place is the greatest illusion. But it still seems to underpin much of it. So while I say it's fine at local government level that you address the housing issue in the constituency where the political parties compete, you need to link it broader. And this is why I say the housing issue must also look at the production of housing materials locally. We have in Roshpina zinc mines, but Namibia doesn't produce zinc sheets. For our housing. Now that's absolutely absurd. How do we have a smelter, but we do not produce the zinc sheets? That should just not be allowed. You say when you smelter here, and even got EPZ status, meaning the company is not paying taxes, then it must be an automatic condition. You produce the zinc sheets here, then you look at the door handles, then you look at the wooden boards, the doors, the door frames. All of these things can easily be produced in Namibia, and when you do that, you have that chain. Now, in the debates, it's more of access to housing, access of land in the political debates for election. But I hope after that one, when we have the national debates again, and then coming a national election in a few years' time, that these bigger economic issues come to the fore. And I would say we can't have politicians continuing saying, yeah, this needs to be addressed and that needs to be addressed. That everyone knows what needs to be addressed. How are you going to address it once you come in? And I think that concrete step to saying we do this, this and that. And we have some good examples, and it was a public institution, the Agriculture Board of Namibia, decided some years back it's impossible to allow retailers to bring all their fresh produce from South Africa and elsewhere. We set a quota, and they said with farmers and the retail chains, and they put it 40% of at least must be locally produced. Now that intervention alone had a whole ripple effect on agricultural production, because now farmers knew for my fresh produce, there's a market. And that's the way you go about it. And you can do the same around the provision of housing and housing material. But you need to step in. And you can't have our building warehouses having virtually only imported things. There's nothing from Namibia. When we have the raw material here, like zinc, like copper.
And truly what you're saying, Herbert, because if we focus on housing, which is a fair thing to have, but while you're inside that house, you still need to feed your family. And if you give me a house and I have no job, first and foremost, I cannot afford to live in that house. And it's not just a question of having a roof over your head. I must still be eating, I must still be showering, and stuff like that. So I think we have to synchronize all these things to have a complete puzzle of what has to be done.
Exactly.
You spoke about jobs. And I'm very passionate about that subject myself. I wrote an editorial yesterday, and it has made quite a viral impact. I was talking about, because there was this thing about the Deputy Prime Minister having said, young people must create their own jobs and not only rely on government. And I was saying in my editorial that the Deputy Prime Minister is 68 years old, and she still clung on to a government job. And I find it a bit selfish that she would suggest that the rest of us must just employ ourselves. In an economy like this, where even a builder who could build, a bricklayer who could build a structure, the economy has gone, the industry, the construction industry has gone 14, maybe 15 now, successive quarters of negative growth. And you ask that person to go and set up his own business. The economy right now is not very conducive for anyone to start business. I mean, even if you take out the equation of startup capital, just everything else doesn't fall in place. What would be your take on those remarks?
I fully agree with you, and we had by other politicians similar statements before. And the irony is really, that they relied all the time on sheltered state employment for it while making those statements. They've never left their public sector or political jobs to make a living like that. And you're absolutely right. There is an economic reality that makes it extremely difficult. And it is not a matter of just skilling people. This is also an illusion to say, when we provide good education, everyone will be able to make a living. No, economic realities and skills, while there's of course a linkage between the two, and education needs to provide a good foundation and skills for everyone on an ongoing basis, lifelong learning, there's no question about that. But that alone does not solve the problem. And the Deputy Prime Minister had also made a controversial statement about that, the question of education and unemployment. It's precisely what you said. The economic environment can and needs to be shaped differently. And we've seen that happen in what was called the developmental states, where particularly some of the Southeast Asian countries have taken an approach of, we are now directing development towards particular outcomes. And to make it possible like that. Now here we've swallowed that ideology of neoliberalism, namely leave the market to sort itself out. If you do that like we do, and you say now to a young person now, start your own business, if you do not have a customer basis, if where you live in your area, in your neighborhood, people are too poor to buy your things, then there is no basis for that. So you'd need to look at economic circles where you have kind of production and consumption, and you must enable that to happen. And what we found during the pilot project with the basic income grant is that in Ochivero, that it created a market for very basic goods, but because there was some cash then in circulation in the local economy, that could happen. Before, if someone produced, like the lady who's baking the bread in the bakery, the neighbors were too poor to buy her bread, even if they wanted. And that is the kind of thing you need to, and like you said, in our case, we had a downward spiral. You need to break the spiral. The construction industry, because I was working with the union in the sector there a long time, they've said years ago already, the local construction companies, they can get by with the smaller projects, but they need once in a while a government tender as a shot in the arm. And then government decided, for cost reasons or whatever, to give virtually all the government tenders to foreign construction companies. And as a result, of course, the local ones couldn't cope. And so their government also needs to ask itself, in terms of them being the provider of tenders, was that done with a developmental objective in mind, or was it done purely commercial or buddy business? We don't know. But the pattern has been clear that the state tenders in construction went largely to outside firms. And then you undermine your own industry in the country. That is obviously the result then.
Indeed. Herbert, the last question to you, and sorry I'm putting you on the spot. So we are coming live from the Namibia Tourism Expo 2020 here at the Escavalier Sports Ground in Olympia. A platform like this, where industry leaders congregate under one roof to exhibit their ideas, to exhibit their services, and to exchange notes, and this being the most affected industry in the country, probably by this COVID-19 scourge, what would be the ideal outcome of a platform like this? What is it that it must do as impact going forward?
I would think excite Namibians to visit their own countries, visit the regions where you don't have friends and family and where you always go every Christmas to that, to open the eyes of Namibians to the beauty of our own country, and to excite them to come visit and to decide on a price structure, even if you say you have a dual price structure. You have one for locals, or like I've seen other countries, one for SADC, and one for overseas. And that would already be a good outcome to make the local price structure affordable, so that people who want to visit can, and it's not like, oh my God, there I'm looking at $2,000 a night, and I'm earning 8,000 a month. How can I ever visit?
Exactly.
That's already a no-go. So if the kind of tourism industry would come to that point and say, we need to provide that, and our campsites can't be all that crazy price that Europeans can pay with their euros, but locals can't pay 400 or 500 for a campsite. So to come to realize that, and to showcase what is in Namibia, and I find like myself enjoying traveling within Namibia, even to places where I don't know people, just to see them. If they can ignite that desire, and then I think such a local expo will have taken a good step forward.
Indeed. Herbert, thank you very much for coming to us.
Thank you, Toivo.
Yeah, that is Herbert Jauch, who has essentially become our resident commentator on very key issues. He always makes time for us, and he returned to the show this morning. We're coming to you live from the Namibia Tourism Expo here at the Escavia Sports Grounds in Olympia, where we are doing the evening review on a rather unusual slot, which is 8 o'clock, as opposed to the 1600 hours slot that has become the norm. But we'll revert to that once the expo is over. For now, thank you for watching and have a great day. Just note that the expo is open to the public from 12 o'clock this afternoon. Come and have a great time after what has been a very difficult year. Maybe this is the platform to relax a little bit and have a great time with your friends. All the COVID-19 protocols have been complied with by the organizers, so there's not much to worry about as far as that is concerned. Thank you for watching.
Need more Kaching? Make more money with the Katiti device from Paratus, a portable touchscreen device that allows you to resell electricity, water, and DSTV subscriptions. With Katiti, you can earn commission on every airtime and data voucher sale made. Did someone say Katiti is rechargeable and comes with a charger cable, vehicle adapter, and home adapter?
Kaching.
Did someone say Katiti has a 3-day battery life and is fully charged in 4 hours?
Kaching.
With Katiti, you'll vosho your way to the bank Monday to Monday.